It lays the predicate and the foundation for the development of a weather satellite that will permit man to determine the world's cloud layer and ultimately to control the weather, and he who controls the weather will control the world.
Blood rain and diseases in the wind. Is the U.S. prepared for deadly dust storms? Question mark. That headline is from BBC. Really? Is it just dust? Pay no attention to the endless bombardment of geoengineering jet-spraying dispersions that plaster our skies on so many days. A plethora of toxic heavy metals, polymers, surfactants, and what else only God, the controllers, and the climate engineers know for certain. And none of this is to even mention our toxic food, water, and medical concoctions. And yes, our so often filled skies are the result of sprayed payload dispersions, not jet exhaust, as an organized effort is clearly pushing. This effort includes this administration and numerous others before it, of course. This should come as no surprise, all doing their part to hide and deny the climate engineering elephant in the sky for as long as possible, till the moment of total collapse, impact at full velocity, the abrupt end of what was never sustainable, this paradigm of total insanity. A full rundown of the sprayed dispersions and the mind-numbingly false "it's just jet exhaust" narrative coming up. Stay tuned for that. But ask yourself this question: why are so many that claim to be fighting climate engineering actually denying it in the same breath by suddenly claiming it's just jet exhaust? Except it isn't. Moving on. More on the toxic nanoparticle-filled air we are all inhaling with every breath we take. From the New York Times, what the air you breathe may be doing to your brain. This is ongoing every week. New reports, new angles, new acknowledgments. Report says studies increasingly find links between higher concentrations of certain pollutants and the prevalence of dementia. Stop there. Again, as I've tried to warn about countless times over so many years, the mountain of highly toxic atmospheric nanoparticles, by far the most toxic particles in our air, go almost completely undetected by design. So-called public protection agencies like the EPA can't possibly disclose what they're not even looking for. Air testing generally 10 microns, official air testing occasionally 2.5 microns. A nanoparticle is unimaginably smaller. Up to 100,000 can fit across the width of a single human hair. So while the EPA tests for what amounts to boulders in our air column, these grains of sand go completely undetected, and we all inhale them. Further, the current administration, EPA, far more than any other in history, is doing everything in their power to virtually gut environmental monitoring and protection, everything. Anyone that's still clinging to the delusion that the cavalry has arrived with the current cast of comic book characters in the White House, time to wake up. So, are you getting forgetful? Would you even remember if you were? Take a nice deep breath of aluminum nanoparticles. On that note, a past report to ponder from RTTV, bees with Alzheimer's. Aluminum pollution linked to dementia in bees. This is an important reminder report. Levels of the metal content in bee pupae, aluminum, that range from 13 to 193 parts per million. If those levels don't sound high to you, it's actually off the charts. Let's add this from the report to put it into context. In human brains, aluminum content in excess of 3 parts per million might be considered as pathological, with possible contributions towards neurodegenerative disease, including Alzheimer's disease. Let's stop there. Let's do the math. So bees have levels of aluminum as much as 60 times more than what it could take to cause Alzheimer's and or dementia in humans. Poor bees, poor insects, and every other form of life. It's a wonder any of these bees can even find their way back to the hive. How long till none of us can find our way home? More from the report. Aluminum, metal, and salts have contributed to the thriving biological availability of this non-essential metal. It's extremely toxic to all life forms. As a result, fish, trees, crops, and humans have all been affected by aluminum. It's in all of us. Been over that so many times over so many years. They continue. Evidence suggests that bees are not immune to its increasing prevalence. Stop. What a moronic point to even make. Of course, bees are not immune to a neurotoxin like aluminum. No living organism is immune to bioavailable aluminum toxicity. Again, it's toxic to all life forms, period. No exceptions. For those that don't know, aluminum nanoparticles are a primary element named in climate engineering patents as an element contained in jet-sprayed dispersions. The intro to the dimming documentary, available on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org for free, clearly shows the full patented dispersion apparatus for heavy jet aircraft. Further, to view my on-film confrontation with the world's most recognized geoengineer, Dr. David Keith, on this exact subject, jet-sprayed aluminum nanoparticles, take the time to view the dimming and learn what most would rather not know, but that we need to know if we're to have any chance of changing course. Bioavailable aluminum nanoparticles are also toxic to root systems. They kill soil microbiome. These toxic elements are being absorbed and uptaken in everything due to the inconceivably small size of the particles. Again, up to 100,000 nanoparticles can fit across the width of a single human hair. Bioavailable freeform aluminum doesn't exist naturally in the environment. It must be mined, refined, and dispersed in order for us to now find it in tests all over the world. The bottom line, bioavailable aluminum nanoparticles are in our rain, are in our breathable air column, and in us, all of us, along with a plethora of toxic climate engineering elements and, of course, an endless list of pollutants from industrialized, militarized, so-called society. And the combination of all these toxic elements fuels exponential, synergistic toxicity. Way worse still. How many know that Monsanto has long since engineered aluminum-resistant seeds? I wonder why. How many know about stock market crop futures trading? How convenient. Bet on a crop to fail and then make sure it does with climate engineering. Moving on from Prospect Magazine, co.uk. Scientists want to block out the sun. How worried should we be? ? Every week, new reports, but none of them willing to admit the elephant in the sky has been raging for decades. From this report, geoengineering is becoming more acceptable as part of the climate solution, they say, but many great and unknown risks remain. That's an understatement. That's by Tim Smedley. Tim, newsflash, no sane, still thinking member of the masses has accepted climate engineering as a, quote, solution. Your words. Climate engineering is nothing short of weather, chemical, and biological warfare. Should author Tim Smedley be sent a link to the dimming? You decide. Next, another new report from the Center for European Policy Analysis. Title of the report, Cooling the Planet, the Geoengineering Gambit. From the report, new technologies to reshape global weather are being rolled out to fight climate change. Will they work? ? Or cause conflict? ? That's by Maciej Bukowski. Mr. Bukowski, for the record, it's about 80 years too late to ask that question. More from the report. The new technologies are not risk-free. That's a gross understatement. Potential side effects include disrupted rainfall in monsoon regions. Stop. No, not just monsoon regions, all over the world. Please tell the truth, Mr. Bukowski. He continues, damage to the ozone layer and risks of rapid rebound warming if programs are suddenly stopped. For the record, the sudden cessation of climate engineering is scientifically termed double catastrophe scenario. The so-called climate science community would have us believe once you start, you can't stop, ever. That's a lie. It's like telling a drug addict you can never stop once you start. But if they continue, death is certain. Same case here. Here's the truth. Again, if it isn't stopped completely soon, we have no chance for even short-term survival. None. That's a mathematical and statistical certainty if we remain in the current trajectory. If it isn't too late already. And stopping the insanity must also include industrialized, militarized devastation. And no one wants to hear that. They want to pretend. Pathological delusion that this paradigm will go on forever into the future magically somehow. It's all a part of the ongoing planetary omnicide. How shockingly obvious can that be at this point? Yet, the head in the sand ostrich syndrome is worse now than ever before. The European Policy Report then states, a recent modeling study found that marine cloud brightening could harm the global ozone layer that shields all living beings from harmful ultraviolet radiation. Again, too late. We're getting UVC on the surface now. Next stop, X-ray. bottom spectrum of UV radiation. Final excerpt. Geoengineering embodies both ingenuity and risk. They say the true hazard may not be simply rogue deployment, but democratic disunity. If leading nations fail to establish coordinating norms, others may shape the rules of planetary alteration. The ability to alter the atmosphere or brighten clouds is no longer hypothetical. The report states, quote, it's technically within reach. Another lie. Climate engineering operations were first fully deployed over the polar regions immediately after World War II. Report continues, but without governance, transparency, and cooperation, it is as likely to divide as to protect, destabilizing the world it seeks to save. Stop. Forget all the could, may, mights in this report. Climate engineering, aka weather, chemical, and biological warfare, is a death sentence for the planet and for us. And we're already 80 years into the planetary Manhattan Project from which there is no return. Solar radiation mitigation operations, aka weather warfare, isn't slowing down the warming of the planet. It's supercharging it and contaminating virtually everything in the process. None of this bodes well for the fate of the human race. This is Dane Wigington. You're listening to the weekly installment of the commercial-free, non-political Global Alert News Report, The End of the World as We Know It broadcast, brought to you by Geoengineeringwatch.org, the largest and most visited website in the world on the subject of global climate engineering operations, aka weather warfare. Quick footnote, for those that truly want to help sound the alarm, very effective climate engineering awareness-raising materials are available on the homepage of Geoengineeringwatch.org. Full-color, extremely high-quality printed materials which we pass on for less than our cost of producing and shipping. We also have Geoengineering Watch shirts, restock sizes and colors. Those are great conversation starters as well. Forward. From Gizmodo.com, Elon Musk wants to block out the sun. Question, why or how is it so many worship this delusional nutcase? From the report, the CEO of the largest satellite company in the world just proposed a bold and totally misguided solution to the climate crisis. They say a large solar-powered AI satellite constellation would be able to prevent global warming by making tiny adjustments in how much solar energy reached Earth. That's actually a statement from Musk. Musk isn't the only entrepreneur interested in blocking out the sun. A growing number of companies are exploring different approaches to SRM, solar radiation mitigation or management. Both terms are used, from using atmospheric aerosols. Does anyone look up? How long has that been going on? Again, 80 years. To mimic the sunlight blocking effects of volcanic eruptions, to launching thousands of mirrors into orbit. Total fantasy. But, the report states, to be clear, Musk has not shared any plans for SpaceX to develop SRM-capable satellites. Exactly. Musk hasn't shared any plans because his proposal is, again, completely impossible fantasy. Final excerpt from the article. Scientists don't know exactly how many SRM satellites it would take to make a meaningful difference in Earth's average temperature, but estimates range so high that many experts consider this solution infeasible. Many experts? If there's a single expert that doesn't consider it infeasible, that expert should be locked in a padded room. A 5-year-old with a coloring book could come up with more plausible solutions than these so-called experts. Final excerpt from the report. It says, needless to say, it's not happening anytime soon, meaning the satellite part of this equation. The rest has been raging for 8 decades plus. So they expect us to pay no attention to the shockingly obvious to anyone that isn't dead from the neck up climate engineering, particle spraying, solar radiation management, jets, crisscrossing our skies day in and day out. Often the most intense atmospheric assaults coincide with incoming weather systems, as the manipulation of available moisture is key to the geoengineering operations, especially relating to the chemical ice nucleation, temperature, whiplash, surface cooldowns. And for the record, these operations and the endothermic reacting elements they disperse into the cloud moisture dry up much of that moisture. Example, my location in Northern California that was scheduled to get about 5 inches of rain over the last 3, 4, 5 days. 1 inch. One. A constant, perpetual, freezing mist drip. Nothing like historical weather systems. Nothing. On that note, from Severe Weather Europe, a historic December-like cold wave is forecast to impact the eastern U.S. The report states the first significant outbreak of Arctic cold air mass is forecast to spread, scheduled to spread into the eastern two-thirds of the United States. This weekend, the cold wave will bring the coldest temperatures of the fall season so far. It's like a light switch from summer to winter, with areas experiencing historic cold for mid-November. Temperatures will plunge to near 30 degrees Fahrenheit below normal, with freeze reaching the deep south and Florida. They continue. Temperatures will be unusually low for this time, with December-like cold affecting tens of millions across the central and eastern U.S. from Sunday through Tuesday. In addition, the first significant snowfall, the chemical kind, will blanket the Great Lakes with massive lake effect snow dumping up to 2 feet of snow in some areas. Well, there you have it. Surely this is proof of a coming ice age, right? No, not so much. That conclusion belongs only to the gone full retard crowd pretending there's a coming ice age as the planet spirals toward total meltdown. The record warm Great Lakes are literally being utilized as a moisture source for what amounts to a massive chemically nucleated snow-blowing atmospheric manipulation. The weather terrorists will pile chemical snow in a few select locations. Matrix Media will then sensationalize the event, starting with the climate engineering cover-up clowns at the Weather Channel. And after the chemical cooldown comes to a close, a rebound to far above normal temperatures is scheduled to occur. Another footnote, with the chemical cooldowns, dozens or hundreds of surface temperatures are published and trumpeted. During the now constant record warm events over the same overall geographic area, only a few records are even mentioned. Yet another means by which the data is skewed and the true severity of meltdown is masked, with climate engineering further fueling the overall fire. Question, how many will jump up and down over this completely engineered chemical ice nucleation cooldown over the most populated regions of the U.S., which is no accident, and rant, quote, global cooling, or quote, proof of a global warming hoax, or see, Bill Gates was right about being wrong. It's just jet exhaust. Far too many are hell-bent on pathological denial of global geoengineering operations. It seems till the brutal bitter end. Footnote, just posted. Geoengineering Watch testifies for Wyoming State Legislature. I recently provided video testimony for Wyoming state legislatures that are pushing for a full ban on geoengineering operations over that state. This testimony is now posted on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org under the Recent and Top Stories columns. There's a mind-numbingly moronic narrative from a number of disinformation sources that because the jet-sprayed dispersions haven't stopped in states with existing legislation to ban geoengineering, that it's somehow proof that it's just jet exhaust we're seeing in our skies, except it isn't. What we are seeing in our skies are climate engineering sprayed dispersions. More on this coming up. State legislation to ban climate engineering is symbolic, yes. It can't be effectively enforced, but it matters. It's about waking the masses. A critical mass of awareness, of consciousness, is the only way forward in this fight. We must awaken those participating, starting with our military brothers and sisters and their families, so that they understand they're literally participating in their own demise. Critical mass of awareness, only way forward. And with every step forward, the cowards come out of their caves in the increasingly transparent and futile attempt to marginalize any that dare to tell the truth on this subject. From Wyoming Public Media, quote, chemtrail conspiracy guides Wyoming geoengineering legislation. Again, that's from Wyoming Public Radio by Caitlin Tan, T-A-N. Caitlin states, quote, misinformation and confusion fueled by a recent Wyoming legislative meeting on how to stop chemtrails. A debunked conspiracy, she says, that claims the government is controlling our health with airborne chemicals. That wasn't the subject matter of that legislative meeting, but she continues. And she quotes me, weather is being used for a weapon, end quote, said Dane Wigington, a national leader who pushes the chemtrail narrative. Stop. Really, Caitlin? Neither I nor geoengineeringwatch.org ever uses the term, ever. Caitlin then states, scientists have proven they are contrails, a well-understood phenomenon of jet exhaust. Really, Caitlin? The power structure bought and paid for scientists, the same kind that pushed the safe and effective narrative for medical concoctions that are anything but safe and effective? More from Caitlin Tan. The Trump administration's EPA says chemtrails aren't real. Yes, that's exactly what the Trump administration and EPA has stated on the record after pretending to address the geoengineering issue. Just condensation trails, they say, just jet exhaust. The Wyoming Public Media Report then states, quote, the Trump administration's EPA, even created a webpage to address the conspiracy. Stop. If you think this administration is going to do anything whatsoever about what's taking place in our skies, except to lie, deny, and cover it up, like previous administrations have done, time to wake up. So, should Wyoming Public Media's Caitlin Tan be sent a link to the dimming and asked why she isn't telling the truth? You decide. Moving on. From the UK Guardian, more mind-numbing pretend truth. This headline, solar geoengineering in wrong hands could wreak climate havoc, scientists warn. There's the first could, may, might in this equation. They continue, blocking the sun may reduce global heating. There's the second red flag, another could, may, might. There's more. But, the report states, a rogue actor could cause drought or more hurricanes. That's the third could, may, might in as many sentences. Not done yet. Solar geoengineering in wrong hands could wreak climate havoc, scientists warn. That's the fourth could, may, might. Here's number 5. Blocking the sun may reduce global heating. Now it's actually making it far worse, not better. Let's move on to number 6 and 7. Final dose of the could, may, might parade of deception. Solar geoengineering could increase the ferocity of North Atlantic hurricanes and cause the Amazon rainforest to die back, and could cause drought in parts of Africa. Why wouldn't it cause droughts everywhere? Is America immune to the raging climate engineering over our skies? They simply publish things like this to make the Americans think, oh, what's happening everywhere else but here, so no big deal, right? Wrong. Anyone that can't see everything I just described is happening here in the U.S. constantly is clinically blind. That Guardian report is from Damien Carrington. That's the environmental editor. Does Damien need to be sent a link to the dimming and asked to explain all the could, may, mights for an issue that has been wreaking havoc around the world for decades? You decide. Next, an update on planetary breakdown and a sample of breaking-related headlines from downtoearth.org. Climate distress as 22 of 34 key indicators hit record highs. From the report, the planet is dangerously close to crossing multiple climate tipping points. Let's stop there. Again, ongoing stories like this every week. The planet has already crossed all major tipping points now. The downtoearth.org report continues. We're now seeing vital signs breaking their records by extraordinary margins: surface temperatures, ocean heat content, sea ice loss, and fire-related tree cover loss. They're dying even when they're not burning. Completely contaminated rain can have that effect. But wait, Bill Gates said everything was okay after all, right? Question, was Billy told to shut up and toe the line, or else? Was Billy told that geoengineering will fix it so that the carbon fuel carnival can continue until nothing is left? Absolutely nothing? More headlines. From extremetemps.com, historic warmth in Europe. Hundreds of records for November's warmest night smashed with big margins from west to east. Again, nighttime lows rising twice as fast as daytime highs. This is a very, very dire harbinger of the heat being trapped in the atmosphere, and climate engineering is a part of that. It's not the only factor, but climate engineering is trapping more heat than it deflects. Part of this problem. From the UK Independent, Philippines declares a state of emergency after typhoon left at least 241 people dead and missing. How many Americans know any of this is going on around the world? From CNN, deadliest typhoon in Asia this year targets Vietnam after leaving a trail of destruction in the Philippines. From New Scientist, toxic algae blighting South Australia could pose a global threat. From that report, researchers have finally identified the species behind the ecological disaster, and they warn that it represents an emerging international threat with unknown consequences. They're trying to blame this all on some rogue species of algae. It's a symptom of a sick, dead, dying planet. We're hurtling towards what's known as Canfield Ocean. Superheated, oxygenless, stratified, dead oceans all over the world. That's the trajectory we are on. Next, a dose of disinformation from phys.org. Cleaner air may be accelerating warming by making clouds less reflective. No, cleaner air isn't the problem. Climate engineering is, along with industrialized, militarized society. But geoengineering is destroying the planet's natural cloud-producing processes more than any other single factor. This is a death sentence in and of itself. If allowed to continue far sooner than almost any dare to imagine, it will be game over. The following comment was sent to geoengineeringwatch.org this week. Quote, Dane, not to defend anyone, but our weekly readers were predicting an ice age in the 50s, 60s, and even 70s. The commenter then asks, were we in an ice age? The comment continues, quote, I do believe in manipulation of the weather, but you seem a bit quick to blame Trump, meaning me, in an implied manner. He has always called out the climate change hoax, and the government is now calling out weather manipulation. Here's my response. First, geoengineering solar radiation management operations were first fully deployed immediately after World War II over the polar regions. The initial impacts were likely significant. Data falsification to make it appear the operations were working better than they were was also a potential factor. By the late 70s, the catastrophic consequences of climate engineering began to kick in. Global temperatures continued their upward trend due to countless forms of destructive human behavior, with climate engineering at the top of the list. In 1998, the warmest year recorded till that time, the weather terrorists doubled down on geoengineering, including constant chemical ice nucleation operations. And in order to program the public into accepting the flash cooldowns as being a part of global warming, the climate change term was then implemented. I could go on, but you get the point. About the commenter's final false conclusion, no, unfolding climate collapse is no hoax. And just because Trump says it is doesn't make it so. And no, the comic book cartoon character in the White House continues the climate engineering cover-up, just as previous administrations have done. Moving on, new from mongabay.com. Climate change is messing with global wind speeds, impacting planetary health. From that report, I'll get to the climate engineering part in a moment. Stay with me. Climate change, the report says, is disrupting wind patterns across the globe in dramatic ways. And when combined with land use change and desertification, these changes are spawning immense sand and dust storms that pose an ever-increasing risk to human health, as I covered earlier. Much more than just blowing dust, though, isn't it? They say, changes to winds high up. The winds of change we experience directly are surface winds, but wind patterns high above Earth's surface are also being dramatically altered by global warming. Those changes, too, impact our health in major ways. They then say climate change is complicated, and while it is clearly intensifying wind speeds during extreme storms, the overall global daily trend is contrary to that and likely one of, quote, global stilling or reduced average surface wind speeds. It's expected that this terrestrial stilling will also cause declines in wind power. Stop. How many times have I pointed that out? And this is a result most directly, not of climate change. I'm not denying that our planet is broken and there are countless anthropogenic causes, but climate engineering operations are the greatest single causal factor for the total disruption of wind currents, the hydrological cycle, and countless other life support systems. When you cover the horizon with light-scattering reflective particles, you alter convection, thus you alter surface wind speeds, period. Then you have the frequency transmissions on top of that. They're wreaking havoc with wind everything, and as far as the wind turbines go, it's an all-or-nothing scenario. Wind speeds are either extreme or not at all, neither of which works for wind turbines. If you double the optimal wind speed, you make nothing because you have to turn the turbine off to keep it from blowing apart. If you cut the wind speed in half, you make 1/8 of the design output. How about solar power? What a great idea. Let's block the sun with light-scattering particles and drastically reduce the capability of solar power. Same with hydropower. Climate engineering is the single most disrupting factor in regard to the hydrological cycle, causing drought and deluge all over the world, wreaking havoc with hydropower as well. Why isn't the green community saying anything about any of this? Absolute cowards. And by the way, there's plenty of cowardice on the other side of the fence as well, with all those who admit to climate engineering but adamantly deny the countless other forms of human damage to the planet. Plenty of denial and cowardice to go around in this equation. Climate engineering operations, both aerosol dispersions and frequency transmissions, have everything to do with all the conditions this report just outlined, yet not a single mention of the climate engineering elephant in the sky. No surprise. Moving on from the Washington Post, the amount of water vapor pulsing across our skies set a record in 2024. So far, 2025 is on pace to top that record. Stop. Yes, again. How many times have I pointed out that the atmosphere carries 7% more moisture for every degree C of warming, and we're likely past 3.5 degrees C now? It must rain more overall on a rapidly warming planet. If it's not, there's a reason why it's not, and that reason is climate engineering operations. And yes, I fully realize, because I monitor everywhere on the globe, that there are countless deadly deluges occurring, but there are even more devastating droughts that can happen based on the laws of physics on a planet that's rapidly warming, again, without the climate engineering factor in the equation. Moving on from the Climate Emergency Forum, the following headline of total genius, quote, "Beyond carbon, healthy oceans and forests could be key to climate." Wow, no words. How could these geniuses have possibly figured that one out? Translation of their headline report: the key to a functioning planet is to have a planet that functions. Pure genius from the so-called climate science community. I wonder how many so-called scientists it took to figure that one out. More engineered weather terrorism from globalvision.com. Storm warning in Brazil and Paraguay. Gusts of wind and hail cause massive damage. Again, baseball and softball size hail, now the norm, constantly all over the world. Chemical ice nucleation for weather modification. Please search the engineering winter section on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org to learn more. Let's add this. The following reports outline what is a direct result of chemical ice nucleation climate engineering operations and the constant extreme hail they're creating. From the UK Guardian, almost 120 flying foxes hospitalized after giant hail smashes Queensland colony. Rescue bats taken to RSPCA Wildlife Hospital in Brisbane's southwest with injuries including faces that were smashed and broken wings. All of this absolutely makes my blood boil. There's more. From KRIS TV, more than 150 birds rescued from Texas Preserve after severe hailstorm injuries. The report says many of the birds sustained severe injuries from the hailstorm, and wildlife officials say some of these injuries are too extensive to treat. These reports are but a minuscule sample of the devastation weather warfare is inflicting on creatures, innocent creatures that are still trying to survive on our imploding planet. How can any still rational human being not feel rage? Not just at the decimation of nature, but also of our fellow human beings all over the planet. The money printers control it all, from weather terrorism to countless conflict, chaos, and carnage zones, literally killing fields. And the matrix media that serves the money printers does their best to hide or spin all of it. You're listening to the weekly installment of Global Alert News, the bad news broadcast, installment number 535, November 8th, 2025. This is Dane Wigington, your host. Global Alert News is brought to you by Geoengineeringwatch.org, the largest and most visited website in the world on the subject of climate intervention operations known as geoengineering. Global Alert News is aired on a number of AM and FM stations around the country. If any radio station near you is willing to air the GAN broadcast in order to inform their listeners of what Matrix Media won't mention, have them contact us at admin@geoengineeringwatch.org. We'll grant them access to our weekly broadcast for free, of course. Recordings of the commercial-free, non-political Global Alert News Hour broadcast can be found on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org under the recent column and on the Dane Wigington YouTube channel. If you're on our email list, please put us on your email contact book so that our mailouts don't go to the spam files. Please help us to share the groundbreaking documentary, The Dimming, which fully exposes the climate engineering atrocities. This is the best A to Z to send someone. If this doesn't wake them up, probably nothing will. Best way to share is by circulating the direct link to The Dimming by email directly from the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org. Sharing directly helps us to overcome social media censorship. When viewing our YouTube of The Dimming or Global Alert News or any other Geoengineering Watch video on YouTube, please subscribe, share, and comment, all of which helps us to circulate critically important data to a much wider audience. To reach those that still aren't looking up, start the conversation somehow with credible data. You can start conversations with Geoengineering Watch awareness-raising materials. They can be found on our homepage. Again, our only goal, provide activists what they need to move this fight forward. Extremely high-quality, full-color printed materials, shocking images. We pass these on for less than our cost of producing and shipping, sometimes packing boxes till the wee hours of the morning. We send these materials to legislators all over the country as well. We have to start spot fires of awareness, as many as we can, so many that those in power can't stomp them out, and that they merge together into a bonfire that cannot be ignored any longer. We have Geoengineering Watch hoodies, shirts, including different colors, now blue, photos on our home page. We have scannable business cards, bumper stickers, all of these effective tools to strike up a conversation on the climate engineering issue. And that is the first key to the door. Reaching a critical mass of awareness on the climate engineering onslaught is the great imperative. Only way forward in this fight. We absolutely must awaken our military brothers and sisters. We must awaken their families. We must awaken the families of defense contractors, all those actively or passively participating in these operations and thus participating in their own demise and ours. Finally, to all those that are steadfastly committed to exposing and halting the climate engineering insanity, thank you for not giving up. I've wanted to more times than I can ever remember, but I can't. I won't. My conscience won't allow it. Only by our collective efforts do we have any chance of exposing and halting what is taking place in our skies. I live for that day. Moving on, more headlines from this week. This from Mother Jones Journal. Trump has abandoned global climate efforts. Stop there. Not exactly. Only doubled down on climate engineering, or at least those who are actually in control are doubling down on climate engineering. Occupants of the White House are chosen for maximum polarization and societal division, and this particular occupant of the White House is certainly the king of the hill in that category. Moving on, from the UK Guardian, world leaders, remember that future generations will judge you at COP30. You can define how. That's the end of the headline from the report. Over the next few weeks, the last of the high-emitting powers will announce their national climate targets for 2035. Carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere are now rising at their fastest rates ever, with catastrophic economic and ecological impacts. Let's stop there. First, is the buildup of heat-trapping gases in our atmosphere actually a problem? Obviously. Second, are climate engineering operations, aka weather warfare, an even bigger problem? Absolutely. Again, it's not a this or that equation. It's a this and that scenario. How could it possibly be otherwise? Another from The Guardian. The era of fine speeches and good intentions is over. Brazil's COP30 will be about action. Let's stop there. Yes, COP30 will definitely be about action. The ramping up of climate engineering kind of action. That's all the COP conferences have ever been about. Behind closed doors. From the UK Guardian, no high-level U.S. representatives will go to UN climate conference. From that report, decision to stay away from COP30 meetings in Brazil underscores the administration's hostility to climate action because they're counting on climate engineering to hide the problem until the moment of impact, just like previous administrations have done. Again, it's all smoke and mirrors. The U.S. military is by far the largest participant in the climate engineering operations with 3 times more aerial jet tankers than all other militaries in the world combined. Let's add one more from The Guardian, and this matters in the bigger picture. Follow me through with this. Exxon-funded think tanks to spread climate denial. Documents reveal from the report. This is according to hundreds of previously unpublished documents that reveal a coordinated campaign. Exxon did not respond to requests for comment. These same carbon fuel entities are neck deep in climate engineering cover-up as well. They need climate engineering to help maintain the current paradigm, to help confuse and divide populations as to the true state of damage already done, keeping business as usual till the last possible moment. All of it is connected. About that pesky methane release problem that could soon enough bring the carbon fuel carnival to a very abrupt end, and I don't say that in jest. From Earth.com, this update, scientists warn the Arctic seafloor might release methane again on a very large scale because this has happened in previous mass extinction events. Again, methane over a 10-year time horizon, 120 times more efficient at trapping heat than CO2. But we don't hear Matrix Media talking much about methane, do we? Unless they're mentioning cow flatulence, which again is more divide and conquer distraction. They don't mention the massive seabed explosions happening from thawing and releasing methane. And in regard to that methane, some might say, so what? What's the big deal? Here's the big deal. This is it. For the record, there's enough methane deposit, hydrate and clathrate, in the polar regions alone to turn this planet into Venus if it releases back into the atmosphere. And it's already started. If it continues and accelerates, game over. Search Siberian methane craters. Look at the images, and that's happening on the seafloor on a scale exponentially larger. Consider that. But none of this is any big deal for the rich, right? Who are getting richer every day, fast. That'll save us, right? From Yahoo News, wealth of the 10 richest Americans grew by nearly $700 billion. Trump had his fair share of that since he took office. Is that what the presidency is about, making money? Same with the Bidens. No difference. Same with all those that came before them. It's just on a bigger scale now. Or will AI save us from ourselves? From Yahoo News, Jerome Powell says the AI hiring apocalypse is real. Job creation is pretty close to zero. Don't hear the administration talking much about that, do we? Powell noted a significant number of companies have recently announced layoffs or hiring pauses, with many of them explicitly citing AI as the reason. And as covered in last week's broadcast, AI isn't working out so well. It isn't going to. The bubble will soon burst just in time for total collapse of everything, everywhere, all at once. From ABC Australia, U.S. Federal Reserve pumps cash into Wall Street as banking systems show signs of stress. It's not showing signs of stress. The wheels are coming off the bus. Giant Ponzi scheme, and they know when it collapses, it's game over. Every retirement fund everywhere and countless other aspects of the financial system will be completely and totally insolvent. You can't print money from thin air forever and expect to live long while the planet's imploding around you. Let's keep going. From the UK Telegraph, this headline, on the front line of America's car repossession boom. The report says number of seized vehicles at 14-year high as more U.S. drivers struggle to pay off auto loans. Just the beginning. And what do we hear every day from the White House? Better than ever. Making America great again. None of this is real. It's all a giant Truman show while the environment implodes around us. How hard can that be to see at this point? From Bloomberg, Japan's $132 billion borrowing binge reshapes global credit. I could go on and on. There's so many of these types of headlines. It's imploding around the planet, and we're seeing political theater. And the whole government shutdown and the lack of food that's now resulting from that, it's not just a financial scenario. Crops are collapsing around the globe. Fisheries are collapsing around the globe. Forestry is collapsing around the globe. And people are going about their lives as if this paradigm is going to magically continue. It isn't. So with everything circling the proverbial drain, environmental and societal, we just need to steal more oil from somewhere and someone, right? That'll keep the carbon fuel carnival going just a bit longer. With that in mind, this headline from Council Estate Media. By a strange coincidence, all the countries Trump wants to bomb are rich in oil. Imagine that. The report states, after many months of contemplating war on Iran and later Venezuela, the U.S. president has set his sights on Nigeria. In one of the strangest coincidences of recent times, all three countries just happen to be rich in oil. What are the chances? Question mark. That's from the report. They continue, Trump has ordered his military to be on standby to strike Nigeria due to claims of mass killings of Christians in the country. Report then says, this is interesting because a certain Middle Eastern country that we're not allowed to mention has been bombing Christians in Palestine, Syria, and Lebanon, and even blew up a church. That's apparently okay, but the report states, Trump has finally found some Christians who he cares about. The ones with oil underneath the land they occupy. If war kicks off between Iran and the country that can't be mentioned, oil from the Persian Gulf could come to a halt and the U.S. needs alternatives, hence Nigeria and Venezuela. Nigeria recently had the audacity to build its own refinery so it can keep its own oil profits in the country. Can't have that, can we? This seems to have angered the Americans, and war is the payback. While there is certainly violence taking place in Nigeria, experts say there's no evidence that Christians are being killed in any higher number than Muslims. In other words, Trump has found an excuse for war as compelling as the fentanyl that doesn't actually come from Venezuela. Mr. Trump isn't even accusing the Nigerian government or military of the killings. He's accusing militant groups like Boko Haram, and 90% of Boko Haram's victims are actually Muslims. Imagine that. Moving on from foreignpolicy.com, with military buildup against Venezuela, the U.S. eyes Cuba as well. Washington hopes cutting off Venezuelan oil to Havana would collapse the Cuban regime. That's what empires are about. Total conquest until nothing is left. About the drug excuse, how many remember how much the opium production went up as soon as the U.S. occupied Afghanistan? It went through the roof. Were they there to stop that? Doesn't seem so, does it? Long history of U.S. governmental agencies being involved in drug trade. Anybody that's done any research in history knows that. And let's not forget this from USA Today. Trump announces lower prices and Medicare coverage for popular weight loss drugs. Now, that makes perfect sense. Building more bombs, ballrooms, bunkers, and lowering the cost of weight loss drugs. Well, tens of millions of Americans go hungry. Veterans are starving on the street, and I know that because I do everything I can every single time I go to Reading, the city near where I live, to try to help some of these homeless vets on the street. Nobody waving their patriotism flag for them, are they? It's sad and sickening that these individuals that served our country are left on the street to fend for themselves. Hundreds of millions of people around the world are starting to starve to death, quite literally. And does all this criticism of the current occupants of the White House mean that I'm somehow advocating for Kamala Harris or anybody else? No. Too many people are too well programmed to think dichotomously, well, if you're not for the red team, you must be for the blue team. No, that's why we're in this mess. Dichotomous thinking. I'm going to blaze through a few more headlines. I never have enough time. Back to the fantasy coming ice age from circacolorado.edu. Antarctica glacier retreating faster than any other in modern history. It retreated 50% in 2 months. 50%. From newscientist.com, Antarctic glacier alarming retreat is the fastest ever seen, 10 times faster than current records. Are those signs of global cooling in a coming ice age? That's exactly what climate engineering and the chemical cooldowns are trying to hide from populations till the last possible moment. From MSM, scientists discover concerning phenomenon that might disrupt vital food chains, could have long-term implications. Might? Really? It's about the glaciers retreating and now no longer delivering nutrients into the ocean. It's disrupting the entire balance of marine ecosystems, including plankton. No plankton, no people. That's a simple equation, isn't it? From Al Jazeera, drinking water in Tehran could run dry in 2 weeks. There's certainly climate engineering behind that equation. We know that from historical record of Iran, its leaders and its scientists stating NATO's cutting off their precipitation. Is that not an act of war? How many other countries being subjected to exactly the same? The covert weapon of the climate engineers: control the climate, you control the world. Just ask Johnson 63 years ago. Former U.S. President Lyndon Baines Johnson. Quote, "He who controls the weather controls the world." Before I run out of time, about the "it's just jet exhaust" patently false narrative. X patterns in our skies, ovals, jet flight tracking transponders turned off, non-commercial flight patterns. Bottom line, when you see a jet leaving a dispersion that suddenly shuts off instantly, unless that jet then fell from the sky because its engines turned off or died, you know you were seeing a dispersion that was just turned off. And no, it's not because the jet magically passed through a completely different vertical layer in the atmosphere. The atmosphere doesn't layer vertically, it layers horizontally. You can't pass through a wall of completely different conditions. That's a lie also. In extreme cold parts of the world, at times, just as cold as flight levels, 40 below or more, and with many times more humidity than at flight levels, do we see combustion engines from vehicles producing lingering, spreading clouds that span out and cover the entire horizon? And combustion vehicles are 100% combustion exhaust. The air that passes through a high bypass turbofan jet engine is only 10% combustion. Again, in extreme low humidity conditions. Yet, even many that claim to be against climate engineering are actually denying it and trying to discredit the threat itself by claiming what we're seeing in our skies is just condensation from jet exhaust. How can any person with a still functioning sense of deductive reasoning actually believe that condensation or jet exhaust can leave lingering, spreading dispersions that can cover entire horizons with a filthy particulate canopy that all too often looks similar to a partial smoke canopy because, of course, smoke is also a particulate matter? The facade anti-climate engineering activists also ridiculously claim that there could be, quote, invisible spraying occurring. This is their way of pretending that they are actually fighting climate engineering while, again, actually denying it. denying the blatantly obvious and inarguable on and off spraying, grid pattern spraying, non-commercial flight route spraying, whole horizon full of filth spraying, jets that leave a trail halfway across the horizon and then completely turn off and continue the rest of the way across the sky spraying, all just jet exhaust, they say, with the follow-up that the only actual spraying that's taking place is invisible. Total lunacy. Manufactured particles, not jet exhaust, proven by Geoengineering Watch, taking a NOAA flying lab to altitude and testing that at one of the world's most renowned testing institutions. Manufactured particles, not jet exhaust. Some of these disinfo sources will rant and rave about being able to tell exactly when, where, and how the contrails will appear, generally making these claims after the event has taken place. But anyway, the preferred conditions for climate engineering operations are not hard to predict at all once you study the data. None of that has anything to do with condensation or jet exhaust. About short, bright trails that many claim is just condensation. In almost all cases, no. Just variations of dispersions. Film footage also exists of these short trails being turned on and off. End of the debate. It's generally not condensation. It's not jet exhaust. The same con artist crew of pretend anti-climate engineering activists constantly rant about there not being a specific gag order on the geoengineering issue. Of course there isn't. Has anyone ever claimed there was? The gag orders apply to all National Weather Service and National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration operations. The issue of geoengineering is not specifically named, obviously, as that would instantly give the whole scenario away, wouldn't it? The con artists pretend to be fighting against climate engineering while in the same breath actively, aggressively denying it, and then asking you to send them your money. Then there's the issue of the freak flash freeze surface cooldowns that is a direct result of patented processes of chemical ice nucleation operations, extreme drops in surface temperatures of up to 50 degrees or more in a single day. And there is also often the extreme hail that is associated with these types of geoengineering operations, baseball and softball sized hail. Various other forms of frozen precipitation are also common. Cotton ball-like, so-called snowflakes, grain of rice-like frozen elements, the list goes on and on. And increasingly often, the frozen material begins to fall at far above freezing temperatures. At my Northern California mountaintop off-grid wilderness home location, I've spent many days and nights outdoors during chemical ice nucleation engineered winter chemical cooldown events. In my otherwise completely silent location with no commercial flight routes overhead, during the engineered cooldowns, a constant parade of jet aircraft can be heard overhead. Absolutely constant. The sound of one geoengineering jet passing over isn't even gone when another one can be heard right behind it. I've seen frozen cotton ball-like clumps fall on my mountaintop at temperatures of 45 degrees. As the ice nucleation process continues, temperatures can drop precipitously. The con artists attribute these completely engineered events as proof of a coming ice age or global cooling. All of the individuals and sources that push the narratives I am outlining are clearly invested in denying climate engineering, not exposing it. Geoengineeringwatch.org has repeatedly tested the chemically frozen material. Chemical ice nucleating elements are always present, including polymer fibers and surfactants. Are we expected to believe that the stampede of jets that can be heard above the clouds during engineered winter events are just fleets of planes that got lost, that are going in circles, and that their jet exhaust is somehow spewing out a long list of patented chemical ice nucleating elements that certainly are not a byproduct of combustion? Translation: absolutely not jet exhaust. These are sprayed payload dispersions. Here's another piece of the puzzle. If 40 to 60 million tons of climate engineering elements were being burned through jet turbines on an annual basis, which our testing proves is falling to the ground, the jets would be falling out of the skies within miles of the airports due to turbine failure. The largest four-engine jet aircraft carriers can burn as much as 5,000 gallons of jet fuel on takeoff alone. If such mountainous amounts of toxic climate engineering elements was being torched through jet turbines, the air and surface contamination within 100 miles of any airport would be so completely contaminated that it would be literally uninhabitable. Please use your sense of logic and reason, your sense of eyesight, your ability to do objective research. Geoengineering jets are spewing out payload dispersions of climate engineering elements into our skies. That's the data-proven fact of the matter. The con artists that pretend to be fighting climate engineering while simultaneously denying it, claiming that it's all just just jet exhaust, also constantly pander for your donations, don't they? They rant on and on about now suddenly seeing the light that they say chemtrails aren't real after all. If these tyrants aren't being paid by the controllers, the carbon fuel industry, and the climate engineers to peddle their blatant deception, they should be. Final thoughts. If, by our collective efforts, we can alter the current trajectory of mathematically certain extremely near-term planetary omnicide, and if, by doing so, some make it through what's already unfolding along with some remnant of the miraculous web of life, isn't that worth fighting for with every fiber of our being until our absolute last breath? Life's a seasonal occupation at best. Make it count for what matters most. And what could matter more than making it your mission to save and salvage the life on this planet that is yet fighting desperately to survive? Protecting creation isn't just an option, it's our absolute obligation. Fully exposing and halting what's taking place in our skies is the greatest initial leap we can collectively make in the right direction. Check the activist suggestions link on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org for specific instructions on how you can help to move this fight forward. Please, make your voice heard, make every single day count. Until next week, this is Dane Wigington from geoengineeringwatch.org.